Hi, my name is Jay Lassiter, and I'm a junior at Harvard-Westlake. So when I started working on my photography project, the hardest thing at that point for me was figuring out what I wanted to do. So my first instinct was to do something related to my family, because I know my family well. They have so many interesting stories. So I wanted to take photos of my grandparents. So my grandfather and my grandmother were members of the Black Panther Party. So I wanted to do a project related to that. And this is actually an image from the double exposure that Mr. Medina talked about earlier with the HAAT students. So this is a photo of a portrait of my grandfather, double exposed with one of the students from HAAT. But from there, I started working on that project, and I kind of felt like it was too close to home, and I wanted to kind of push myself further, and I wanted to do something that I wasn't as comfortable with. I kind of wanted to try harder in a way. So I focused on issues relating to LA specifically, and the biggest issue that I found in LA was homelessness. Right now in Los Angeles County alone, there's over 56,000 homeless people. So to me, that is the biggest issue in LA, and that is what I wanted to focus on. So I already had a basis for working with them. I work with a group called #LunchBag, and every month we go down and we deliver sandwiches to people on Skid Row. So I already was somewhat experienced with this, so I felt like it was something that I could do. So I went down there for my first time with the intention of taking photos, and I didn't really understand at that point how it was going to work. It was really hard for me to take photos of people. Most people didn't really want their photos taken, which is of course very understandable. Like you have to look at it from their perspective. They're in the lowest points of their life. Obviously I wouldn't want a photo taken, so that was something I kind of had to deal with. And then the other issue was that I didn't have very much time there to spend there. I told you I only went once a month, and in that month I only spent 30 minutes to an hour there, so I really kind of had to make the best of my time. So while that started out as something that was harmful, it became kind of a benefit, because I had to go in and I had to go in with a plan, and I had to understand what I wanted to do ahead of time. So this photo is a guy that I met there, and he was very open. This is the second time I went down, and he was very open to having his photograph taken. I talked with him, he was very nice, and he was happy. So I kind of tried to convey that in a lot of my photos, that even if you're in this situation that is obviously so horrific and so horrible, that people can still feel happy and be happy. So this is another one. I tried to convey a similar sense. There's two guys together, and they are clearly very happy, even if they're not in the greatest situation. But then I tried to balance that with kind of the realities of what was happening there. So as you can see here, there's still so much horrible things happening here, and I felt like this was the biggest issue in LA, and I had to bring attention to it. But with that said, I tried to have that balance. So as you can see here, this is another man who I did a portrait of, and he was more optimistic about his situation. I remember talking to him, and he had aspirations and he had things that he wanted to do. This is another man, and this is actually a family. They were together, and they talked to me about their experience living there, and they had been there for a while. This is right outside of a mission in downtown LA on Skid Row. This was another guy. I didn't really talk to him as much, but I thought this photo was interesting because there's 3 different parts to this photograph. There's him on the bottom sitting, and I think he is interesting, and then there's also the medicine on top of the suitcase, and then there's the man in the background. And then this was my final photo. I really liked this photo personally. I thought the ambiguity to her, I thought that was really interesting, because you don't see her face. So it's kind of more impersonal and it's private to her, because you still have to think that's her home, so that's where she lives. So I wanted to give an element of privacy there. So all in all, I was happy with my choice to switch my project, but I still, in the future, am looking to do a project related to my family. But I'm happy with my work, and I'm happy with what I do.